Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to SIM Online Masterclass Series Season 2. This is our fourth session, and the topic for today focuses on supply chain. Just a few house rules before I introduce the speaker for today. If you do have any questions along the way, please feel free to type your question out in the Q&A segment on the right-hand side of your browser. So there is an Ask Your Question session. So you can actually type your question out, and Dr. Sanders, Dr. Celine, and our Grenoble staff will assist to answer your questions. And if you have any other questions regarding other programs under SIM, you can also chat with our staff at the General Inquiry e-booth. So once you exit the webinar, you will be able to see the e-booth. So let me go to the speaker for today. Mr. Nick Sanders is the Associate Professor from the Department of Management and Technology in Grenoble. He served as an infantry officer with the British Army in his early years, and he worked as a consultant for private sector mining and infrastructure organizations after retiring from the Army. So he has a wealth of consulting experience under his belt from organizations such as UK Department of International Development, WHO, and United Nations Joint Logistics Center. As part of the teaching faculty in Grenoble Master of Science Management in International Business, he brings in a lot of industrial experience with him. And his personal motto is, you have to cross the line to find out where it is. So without further ado, let's welcome Nick. Nick, over to you.
Well, good morning from a cold and rainy France. Well, because it's a Saturday morning here, welcome to my home as well. I'm actually in my study at home, and earlier on, people were looking at the log burner behind me and having a laugh because, of course, the temperature is very hot in Singapore. I also, during my time in the army, served in Singapore and in Johor Bahru in Kota Tinggi. This is a long time ago, and a warm welcome to you. What we're going to be looking at today is the future of supply chain. Now, it's a very, very broad subject. There's a lot of technical details to it and industry or sector or function specific language, but I'm not going to go down that path. What I'm going to do is talk very simply and use examples of the challenges that face the future of supply chain that we can all understand using products and examples that we all know. And I'm going to leave you with a very simple mnemonic or way of remembering how to look at the challenges that the future of supply chain are presenting. This is actually a small part of the, because I actually do teach supply chain, or the supply chain module, on the MSc Master in International Business. And this is a small part of it where we do actually look at the future of supply chain, the challenges and the integration of potential solutions. Well, I hope you enjoy it, and don't forget, there'll be time for questions after the program presentation. I'd be delighted to answer any questions that you may have. So the class objectives today are the takeaway, the take home from the session will be to unpack, explore, and identify 3 visible and easily understood demands and pressures that we are seeing on supply chains. And I'm using examples which we're all very familiar with, and I hope put a smile on your faces. We'll also be introducing the systems, technologies, and the management approaches that are helping the business rethink and redesign supply chain structures and processes. And the big take home today is a simple model, CAR, that we can use as a model to overlay on supply chains and to think about how we can actually optimize them and use them in dealing with the growth of these demands made on supply chain. Again, something that you will learn on the Masters in International Business program is the fact that these functions don't exist in isolation. They are very dependent upon finance, revenues, money, and particularly on market demands. Don't forget that the market demands things, and then supply chain's responsibility is to deliver it. So the 3 challenges that we're going to be looking at today, and there's many challenges, but these are ones that we can all identify with because we all are involved with them as general consumers of the goods that organizations produce. The first one is last mile logistics, or LML as we'll call it from now on, also known as capillary distribution to give it its technical word. And that really is when someone knocks on your door and puts a package in your hand. We'll also be looking at the turbocharged exponential growth in demand for product variety. Those of you that are attending today, I bet none of you are wearing the same pair of shoes. None of you have got exactly the same telephone. And so there is this high growth from the market in terms of variety. You look at things like drinking water, and you look at bottles on tables and desks, and they're all very, very different. The third challenge that we're facing, and this is all around us now, and you're very much aware of it, is the need for compliance with CSR, or corporate social responsibility. That really broadly defined is the ethical and environmental demands that the world is now making upon itself, and supply chain actually is fundamentally important in delivering it. So there's a lot more challenges, but I think these three are interesting to look at in detail. In summary, we're the market, and we have grown to expect certain things within the service level. We want lots of products, varieties, and choice. We want it delivered to our doorstep now, or maybe yesterday if they could do it. And also, we need to feel reassured that the products we are buying fit within frameworks of environmental neutrality, and that they are ethically produced. Incidentally, we also want all of that at the right price. So let's have a look at these three challenges in greater detail. The first one, product variety. Market segmentation is becoming increasingly subdivided. Whenever I visit, one of my big hobbies is collecting Kit Kat, the chocolate bar. And when I arrive in Singapore, the first thing I do is I run to the nearest 7-Eleven to buy the latest Kit Kat that Nestle have produced. Currently, I have 148 different Kit Kats in my collection. This is a simple chocolate bar, and look at the amount of variety that we demand. Marketing campaigns from organizations promise us that variety and choice. And when we're made a promise, we expect it to be delivered. The market is better informed and it's more sophisticated. When we're looking at a product now, no matter what we want to buy, whether it's a camera or washing machine, or whatever, we go online and we're faced with a huge amount of choice, and we expect that choice. So the information that we have about products is better informed and leads to greater sophistication in demand. There's something called competitive edge theory. And competitive edge theory means that you constantly need to, or try to be, one step ahead of your competitor. And what this does, it dictates rapid product evolution and change. Look how many iPhones have been produced since the first iPhone was made back in, I think it was 2009 or something like that. And the amount of range that it creates now. There's also rapid evolution in technologies in products. And even though the previous technology was perfectly serviceable, we are led to believe as the market that the new technology is better, more efficient, and more functionally adapt. I'm just going to use some fun and simple examples to illustrate that in great detail. Dr. Martens. Now, I'm not as young as I look, but Dr. Martens. I remember as a young man in the 70s, there were 5 Dr. Martens. And on the left-hand side of your screen, those were the 5 that were available. And if you look underneath your Dr. Martens shoes, you will see acid and oil proof. And the reason it says that is that they were designed for industrial line workers who were on their feet all day, needed to have those acid and grease protections on their shoes, and needed to have that bouncy sole. On the right-hand side, we can see the variety in the current range based upon just one of those model shapes. Now, what I want you to do is think to yourself, when you go to the Dr. Martens shop, do they have all of those models in all of the sizes for as many people as they think or imagine or hope might want them. Now keep that in the back of your mind when we look at one of the solutions that we have. Ray-Ban sunglasses were an industrial manufacturer of Air Force grade glasses for pilots. And those are what were known as the original 5 on the left-hand side of the screen. You had 3 varieties of aviator, you had what they called the Jackie O, and you had the Wayfarer. On the right-hand side is a photograph of the Ray-Ban concept store in New York. And look at that huge growth in variety and shape that are available. Another one is the Shot Perfecto. The original, designed in 1948, millions sold, made famous by Marlon Brando in The Wild Ones, and it became an iconic item. Currently, Shot are offering 148 varieties, or 148 varieties just on the original model are available to the consumer. Now, again, I want you to look at the model on the right and think, how many people would buy that? Okay, and we need to have that in your mind when we look at how we actually are able to determine how many people actually want that. The second challenge, last mile logistics, and that is through the explosive growth of home delivery caused by the equally explosive growth of online procurement. On the left-hand side, you can see home delivery by Walmart, and in the foreground, and please take note of that, is the Walmart customer tracking app. Okay, see on your phone, you can actually see exactly, you can order on your phone and you can track and see, and you can get a precise time for when someone is going to knock on your door or drop it in your post box or whatever. On the right-hand side, we can see the huge growth and very rapid growth of online sales in billions of dollars, and corresponding with that, the fall in retail, or what we call footfall or high street physical shops. Okay, so that is set to grow, and the final figure is from 2040. It's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow. Again, huge demand on supply chain. Now, why is home delivery a challenge? It's a nice thing for us to have, isn't it? It's convenient, etc. But look at it from supply chain's perspective. It's expected in the service level. It has become the new normal for access to consumer goods. It has increased environmental impacts. Logically, think about it. You get small parcels that each one of them require to be physically delivered. This puts significant growth on environmental pressure on environmental impact. There are higher rates of returns. Okay, the clothing or the apparel industry has written into its cost model for online sales, generally across mid-range clothing goods, a 35% return rate. In other words, it arrives, it's either damaged, or most probably it doesn't fit, or it's not as per expected from the online catalogue. And you'll notice that there's always free returns policy. Well, nothing's free, is it? It's actually written into the price. That 35% is actually written into the global price of what we buy. Because it's grown so quickly, the actual courier services haven't grown to meet that demand. And so there is high employment within what we call the gig economy. In other words, somebody has a truck or a van, rather like the Uber or Grab system, where they will actually say, I'm available on certain days and to deliver either in a car or a truck or a van, etc. And that obviously creates volatility. It, possibly at festive times, people are at home with families, and there's a fall away in supply of that, and it presents a problem for the company to be able to predict delivery times and delivery volumes. And demanding is increasing at a rate faster than infrastructure and resource can be developed to cope with it. So big problem for supply chain. The third challenge we're going to be looking at is CSR and ESG imperatives. ESG is environment, society, and governance, but we're going to call it CSR, which is corporate social responsibility. The demands on the supply chain are that employment must be fair and non-exploitative. Okay, slave labor, underpaid labor, etc., is now globally seen as a negative. It is required to use sustainable products and raw materials. Okay, now sometimes we're locked in to where we can get raw materials from, for example, coffee and cocoa. We can't just grow it in a country where we want to grow it. It needs specific geographic soil types and weather types for it to grow. So we're kind of locked into that. As we've mentioned, reverse supply chain, recycling is now an imperative. You know, bottle banks and the infrastructures and so on that companies need to put in place to ensure that their products are not just put into landfills and thrown away. An example of that is Nespresso coffee, where once the market protested that, you know, an aluminium capsule with quite a lot of resource that goes into it just to have a cup of coffee was unacceptable, they then started up a recycling and return project where you have the bags and you put it in and you can drop them off. We also need to have reduced emissions and carbon footprints in what we do, the manufacturing process, the logistics process, the transport process, and the shipping process. The impacts of that are the increased costs of audit and surveillance. It actually costs quite a lot to actually ensure that everything is in place to satisfy CSR imperatives. In some cases, obviously, there's an increased operational cost. There is high reputational and legal risk. Reputation and legal, and you've all read stories of companies that are scandalized because, you know, that slave labor is used in produce, or, you know, goods are not sustainable and so on. The laws, statutes, and guidelines that are in place are constantly evolving and actually quite difficult to track and trace and monitor. You know, yesterday's guideline is today's statute, and that is tomorrow's law. And it's quite a job and it's quite an effort to make sure that you are current with the laws and statutes of that actually go to protect and foster these CSR imperatives. So let's call it a bit of a headache. Now, how easy is it to have visibility of your supply chain in terms of CSR? In other words, supply chains are expected to be compliant within the CSR imperatives. Now, here's the wonderful sort of school textbook diagram of supply chain, and it's lovely, isn't it? It's very linear. We've got a supplier, we've got a producer, and we've got a customer. What is the reality, though? That is the supply chain for one bottle of milk produced in one country. So it's not a supply chain, is it? It's a very, very complex supply network. And how do we ensure that we have compliance throughout all of it? So why is CSR a challenge within complex supply chains? They are complex supply networks. There's high levels of invisibility within certain parts of it, often at the extreme ends. For example, Apple have to date been unable to map their total and full supply chain from absolute beginning to absolute end. It often crosses international borders where we don't have visibility or any authority over the supply chains in another country. And quite often, possibly, there's different statutes and guidelines that govern how people operate. What's also important is that legal liability is one thing, reputation is another. And even though you might not be legally liable for something or certain part of your supply chain, possibly at your upstream, nonetheless, evidence of non-compliance on a legal level within one part of it, even though it's not your company, can lead to reputational impacts, which can be quite devastating for your business unit. There's a lack of clarity, laws, statutes, and guidelines at what point they are in the law books. And also, there are a growing number of informal advocacy groups, organizations, NGOs that are looking constantly or troubleshooting at supply chains to identify and highlight malpractices or questionable practices within the supply chain. So in summary, there's often low levels of visibility and knowledge within those from our business unit. Right, it's not all bad news, and this is how the future of supply chain is being looked at. And I'm going to introduce a simple mnemonic for you to remember a model that you can use, and it's a handy little tool that you can pull out to look over a supply chain and say CAR, okay? Or not only to measure it, but also how you can manage new inputs or look at the possibility of new inputs to deal with those challenges. The first one is communication, and that's the integration of new communications technologies and particularly data management tools. We've all heard of blockchain and things like that, these new technologies that are coming in, and we need to start seriously looking at them and how they can benefit our supply chain management. A stands for automation, and that is advanced automation and handling systems. Tremendous growth in that particular field. The third one is responsibility, and that's an overarching attitude and approach to compliance with CSR imperatives. It is significantly helped by the fact that there is research evidence that the market willingness to pay for products actually increases somewhat or to some extent when we are reassured and evidence that our goods are being produced within CSR imperatives. So let's look at those three challenges. Let's look at CAR and see how we can link the two. And again, I'm not going into all of the solutions, but what I'm doing is giving nice examples, and I think quite funky examples of how we're actually doing that. Last mile logistics is now, or people that are reliant on last mile logistics are now seriously looking at drone tech. And it is growing exponentially. If you look at the investment or the spends on delivery or commercial delivery drones in Japan, in 2016, the spend was 35 billion yen, and this year, 175 billion yen, set to more than double in 3 years' time. So it's very much a wave that is actually solving the issue of last mile logistics, both in terms of the actual technical resource and its availability, and obviously, of course, the environmental impacts. Last mile logistics, this is a very simple one. I love this one because it's so simple that it's wonderful. What it does, it looks at the market and says, what does the market do? The market goes to the supermarket or the market goes to the mall. So instead of having to deliver the product to the door, why don't we have a coded, centralized delivery point where we can combine the two things that human consumers do? And I love that. It's really very simple. It's a great idea. Again, making significant reductions on the necessity for that knock on the door and those last mile logistics, and actually adding to the convenience for the consumer because they don't have to be in at a certain time or sign for something. They're given a code, so it's an authenticated pickup. Now, these are just two of many solutions for last mile logistics. And have the companies used CAR? Yes, they have. They've been aware of environmental issues. They've used sophisticated communication and data management systems, and they've integrated innovative automation. Right, the demand for variety and choice. Remember all those Dr. Martens, those Ray-Bans, and that really, in my opinion, quite ugly leather jacket that was made up of 6 different colors. Now, are Ray-Ban in the business of manufacturing products that they just simply hope will sell, all that variety? They know the classics will sell, the Ray-Ban, the Aviator, the Wayfarer, the Aviator, and the Jackie O. But look at the variety that there is out there. Do they just make them and hope that they'll sell? Do Schott actually create that 184 variants of the Perfecto and just cross their fingers and go, oh, we hope these sell. We hope they like the pink pocket and the leather and the yellow collar. Well, let's hope not. So how do they actually use communication and automation to precise the outputs for the variety products that are outside of the classics? They harness technologies to create an interface between marketing and supply chain. And this is a phenomena known as co-creation. Co-creation directly between the consumer and the producing company. And what this does is this permits a make-to-order system. Not a make-to-hope to sell, but a make-to-order. What this allows them to do is to mass produce the classic products and only make the variants that reflect the numbers that are demanding them from the market. So how does this work? Well, there's actually two ways that supply chain is looking at to do that. And again, look at it's holding hands with marketing the whole time. High street stores are increasingly becoming what they call catalog stores, concept stores, where there is a physical catalog. Physical shops will show range and precise sizes and other specifications. So you can go into the Dr. Martens shop, you can choose the funky color that you want, size it, and they will tell you, well, we don't have that size in stock. What they then do is take you to the back of the shop and you order it online and it is delivered the next day or 2 days later. Okay, so even though you're at the high street, you are still making to order, but getting the impression that you're actually shopping, which for things like fashion items is quite important. The actual shopping experience is a part of it. The other system that we use is online or make to order, where customers can create and create and design their own unique version of a standard product. Now, I have a way of remembering this, is that every pizza is a margherita until it becomes a pepperoni by putting a bit of pepperoni on top. And this is how it works. You have the standard product, and then if you like, the pepperoni is put on top of it. Now, this is only possible now through enhanced digital interfacing and advanced automation systems in manufacturing. Some examples. That funky Perfecto jacket that I designed myself with my daughter. There you go, that's how we did it. And if you look at the left, you can see the classic. And what you can do is actually click down. You've got main shell, sleeves, top collar, under collar, etc. And then you've got the color choices that you make. You can create your own unique product. Write a check, use PayPal for $995. That's American dollars, not Singapore dollars, be warned. And you will get your own unique design through, produced by complex and efficient automated manufacturing. On the right, Ray-Bans as well. The Aviator is a classic. Make the classic Aviator and it will sell. Make a variant, it might not. How do we solve it? We get the consumer to go online and actually create the variant for themselves. And there you go, create your unique Ray-Ban. Very clever, but it's only possible by having an adventurous look at the new systems that are out there. And again, having the will to actually invest in them and bring them in. Now, I've given you examples from Schott and Ray-Ban. Now, have they used CAR? Absolutely. They've used advanced communications and data management systems. They've used automated or complex automated manufacturing systems that have made the creation of that unique product possible. And they've also looked at the responsibility of actually only making what will move to market, avoiding overproduction and its obvious impacts on the environment. And what this does, this allows companies to produce what will sell and not risk producing only what they hope will sell. Now we come on to a more complex and difficult one. And we've looked at why CSR is very, very difficult to achieve within supply chains and requires an overarching value approach by an organization, that responsibility. There's two approaches to CSR. One is reactive and the other one is proactive. And we'll have a look at what they mean and the impacts of those. Now, I come from, or I've had a lot of experience in the shipping and the liner shipping industry. Now, when a liner company, Maersk Line, CMA, etc., produce a vessel, they expect it to have a trading life of around 20 years. It's very asset heavy and it's very difficult to move and shift. In other words, there's limited agility within the supply chain. And for example, IMO 220 expected what they called sulfur capping or carbon reduction emissions within global shipping. And there you can see sulfur cap, and this is from the IMO itself, that sulfur cap on marine fuel raises business costs. So the shipping companies are obviously going to be reluctant to comply because of higher costs involved. Not reluctant, but they are only going to react to a law. They are not going to work towards creating that law. And so a reactive response is where organizations comply with imposed or mandatory CSR regulations and statutes. It's often the case in the invisible sectors where there is low market demand for CSR or low visibility, okay? Less consumer oriented, quite often for things like raw materials, manufactured goods, fabrication materials and so on, where the market doesn't see it, okay? That classifies or characterizes reactive responses. We're given the law and we think, okay, we have to comply with it. But it has a cumulative effect, because if we have reduced shipping emissions, we have reduced truck emissions, put it all together, the combined effects actually globally create within a supply chain an improvement in CSR compliance and CSR performance. Let's have a look at a proactive approach. This quite often, or a proactive approach, is where the consumers of our product demands it. Or we have, what it is, it's where we actively seek and look for CSR improvements that we can make. It's often when market visibility is high and when the market actually demands CSR evidence. It's also more likely or characteristic of very agile supply chains that are not embedded in things like heavy investment infrastructure and asset. And it's achievable where we have non-standardized products, okay? And where we have greater flexibility and control over the components of our supply chain, including sourcing and supply. The fashion industry, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Gucci, etc., a big part of their advertising and sensitization campaigns now highlight their CSR initiatives. Okay, and here we have an example of an advertorial produced by the Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy group, where what they're doing is they're actually talking about their CSR, and that's going out to the market. That's not an internal report, that's from an advert. 40% of their leather comes from LWG certified tanneries, because there are multiple tanneries and Louis Vuitton can actually choose where they source from. 100% of their vineyards for their champagne and cognac brands are certified sustainable. Why? Because they have choice within those grape growing regions. 90% of their diamonds are Kimberley process certified, and that means that those diamonds, or the supply chain of those diamonds, hasn't contributed to warfare, blood diamonds as they are known. Okay, so CSR, slightly more complex, slightly more approach-based, requiring a lot of management thinking and value creation within organizations and out to the market. So in summary, we've looked at 3 of the challenges to supply chain. There's many more, but these are nice ones that we can get a feel for, and we've all experienced them. Increase in demand for choice and variety, growing. The demand for last mile logistics through e-commerce explosions, growing. External and market demands for CSR compliance, growing. And we've looked at the 3 overarching factors that we can apply, brought them down into a simple mnemonic, CAR. And they are communications, which is the integration and optimization of communication and data management technologies that allow particularly this idea of co-creation to precise demand. Automation, we're looking, and companies are looking at taking significant advancements in infrastructure and manufacturing automation technologies, which are reducing environmental impacts, not only by their own emissions, but by allowing us to not have to overproduce to satisfy the market demands. And finally, our responsibility, which is an awareness of and a will to deal with the impacts the supply chain creates, and strategizing and operationalizing to keep our supply chains green, clean, and kind. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you've got any questions about this presentation, you'll have the opportunity to ask after the wonderful presentation on the MSc Management in International Business. And I do hope that in the future, I will get to meet some of you live and dangerous in the classroom. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Nick. And yes, so if you have any question regarding this session itself, do remember that on the right-hand side of your browser, there is the Q&A session. So you can actually type your question over there and we will address them shortly. And meanwhile, while we wait for the question to come in, I would like to introduce the next speaker. So next up, we have Ms. Celine Foss. She is the Program Director of Master of Science Management in International Business from Grenoble. And Celine has been with Grenoble for 17 years, and she played a key role in developing global partnerships and establishing academic, administrative, and operational systems. So she will take the next 10 minutes to run through on the Master of Science Management in International Business. So Celine, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes, good. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick. I would like to now introduce you a little bit to the MSc Management in International Business program by Grenoble Ecole de Management, held in Singapore with our partner SIM. Now, the program comes from Grenoble. This is a picture of the school in Grenoble. The city, a little bit of Grenoble, is an international city. The population is highly international thanks to all the international companies within the city, and also, of course, the students of Grenoble Ecole de Management. The city is situated in France, in the southeast of France, and the school, Grenoble Ecole de Management, was founded in 1984. And the program, the MSc Management in International Business, is one of the oldest international postgraduate programs at Grenoble. And actually this year we are celebrating its 25th birthday. So one of the first programs that were master's programs for international students. Now, the program Grenoble Ecole de Management has more than 3,300 international students, so highly international, but also not just the students, but the teaching staff as well. As you can see, we have more than 600 teaching staff, and 50% of them comes from another country than France. So a school that holds more than 50 different programs, from undergraduate programs to doctoral level, and within that we have the MSc MIB program. So a highly diverse international community. Grenoble Ecole de Management are triple accredited. So we are part of the 1% of schools worldwide with the triple accreditations that we are very proud of, because the accreditations are international recognitions of the quality of the organization, its programs, and the degree that it delivers. As well as that, we are highly ranked, as you can see, number 6 of business school in France, and then on an international ranking like the QS and the Financial Times, we are very well ranked as the MSc MIB program. Now, the MIB objectives have been designed based on the demands of the organizational environment and the need for competencies and aptitudes essential in international business. So we adapt our curriculum to meet those needs. An example of that, we update our curriculum. Like this year, there will be a new or 2 new modules on the program. One called the Business Analytics and Management module, where we're meeting the need to work with business intelligence and big data systems. And the second module is Integrative Entrepreneurship and Consulting Project, taught by Nick Sanders, that we have seen that our alumni are more now increasingly employed in consultancy and entrepreneurial startups. Now, the MIB program is a generalist master's program that is aimed at pre-experienced bachelor students from a variety of backgrounds, educational backgrounds, but also international backgrounds. It is a generalist master's program, and the gold dust, there's a little bit the gold dust of the program is the fact that you will find yourself in a classroom of about 35 students with different backgrounds, from different cultures, and you will work closely together. And what we like to say is that you will learn as much from each other as you will learn from the lecturer. And of course, you will also learn a second language on the program through the whole first year. And in Singapore, you have the possibility to learn French or to learn Korean. Now, as I've already said, the program is globally recognized, but we also have a high international student and faculty, more than 50 different nationalities. The program in itself is extremely interactive and concentrates really on learning by doing, through cases, through scenarios, and there is a high proportion of projects and group work. So you get the chance to develop your soft skills within working in intercultural and multicultural groups. There is also a high degree of personal development, where we strongly believe that the classroom is where you learn theory, but by personal development, what we mean is developing the actual managerial aptitudes and qualities that are much sought after in the current global, for the current global employers. Together with SIM, you will have access to both school databases for internship opportunities and job opportunities. But what we also do is through the year, we organize extracurricular activities so that you're able to develop your professional employability profile. Like from the beginning of the program, we have something called the Induction Week, where we put you into the driving seat of the program academically, but you will also do loads of other group team activities to learn to know each other. So it's really 1 week to help you getting into that, get into the program. We also through the year organize different workshops for you to develop your CV, your LinkedIn profile. From the beginning of the program, we also organize an Excel workshop where you will get the basic Excel skills to be able to pass that through different job interviews that often are testing your Excel skills, and other workshops really to develop your employability profile. So those are extracurricular workshops. Now, study in Singapore, you have the cultural diversity within the city, but also in the classroom. It is a leading and financial business hub. It really gives you the opportunity to go anywhere in Asia. And the specificities of the MSc MIB program at SIM is that we organize study trips once a year. Now, we were going to do that to Hong Kong in March last year, but unfortunately with the lockdown, we were not able to continue. But we really hope that will be something we will be able to do for next year cohort. Now, these are just the living expenses for you. If you're coming from another country than Singapore, you need approximately 1,000 to 2,000 Singaporean dollars for living in Singapore. Okay, but those are you are informed and helped through SIM administration, of course, when arriving to Singapore. This is the class diversity of last class. So you see we have people from all over the world, 50-50 approximately gender-based. The average age of the students are around 22 years old. So pre-experienced bachelor students, you're coming often directly from your bachelor studies with approximately 1 year of work experience. So you don't need to have any work experience to get onto the program. Now, these figures talk for themselves. Our alumni, as you can see, these are from the Financial Times rankings that shows that more than 91% of our students find a job within 3 months of graduation. So it's a very high figure. And let's say that 3-4% of our students go into a doctoral program, so they continue their studies. Now, 76% work internationally. The fact that we are such an international program, and we have a campus in Grenoble, but also in Paris, in Singapore with SIM, but also in Berlin. All these students, they then go back and work internationally in another country than France or Germany or Singapore. The main sectors where our alumni are going are listed below: consulting, consumer products, finance, banking, IT. And that's really the fact that the program is a generalist master's degree. You're not going to specialize in any field, but it really opens the door to any sector where you want to work. And what often the employers tell us is that they like hiring our graduates either for an internship or a job is because they are still young. They are still mobile, and they're still in the learning process where actually they quickly learn and adapt to the different company cultures. So our alumni are in any sector, in any industry, and in any function within any sector. So just a list of the different companies that typically hire MSc MIB alumni, and that can be companies in Singapore, in France, in Germany, or the rest of Europe. Now, just a couple of pictures, nice pictures, because through the first year of the taught part, SIM organizes company visits. So as you can see here, to Kerry Logistics, to Bloomberg, where you have a presentation of the company. If they hire interns, they will do the interviews while you're there. You're able to ask questions. Or SIM organizes guest lectures that comes to SIM to talk about their company, to talk about future managerial positions. And then on the left-hand side here, you have a picture of the numerous networking events that we organize in Singapore. At each beginning of the year, we gather you, our students, our new students, meeting up with all our alumni that are actually working in Singapore at the moment. So we have a couple of networking events through the first year so that you're able to communicate and to meet graduates from the program and graduates also from other programs at Grenoble Ecole de Management. Now, SIM also organizes a fair, a careers fair at the campus. They organize networking with companies at the campus. So round tables where you're able to ask questions. You might be doing a case study that is a real-time case study with a company. And we have a picture here, very nice one from the induction from our students last year where they'd been to an icebreaker activity in Singapore before the start of the program. Now, these are 3 alumni of the MSc-MIB that did the program at SIM. We have Kaiden, who is Singaporean, who stayed and now is working in Singapore. We have Nikita, who is from India. And then we have Alexandra, who is from the UK, who worked, I think, at in Singapore for a year and then went back to the UK to work. So you see very mobile graduates, alumni that we have from the program. Now, this is the MIB curriculum. And as I said in the beginning, we update the curriculum to meet the needs of the companies. What do they need in their future managers? So the curriculum is structured and we can divide it into 4 domains. The first one looks at the global business environment. So there you will have modules such as managerial economics or geopolitics. The second, the primary functions such as project management and supply chain management. And then, of course, you have the modules that are international financial risk management or legal environment. And overarching all of that, you have modules that will teach you on how to do business, how to be a better manager, such as international negotiation, managing people in the global context. So we have those 4 macro areas coming together: strategy, implementation of strategy, and the support of that implementation and the manner in which we approach what we do. So after the first year on the program, you have achieved a coherent overview on how an organization works, and you have developed high comfort zones within specific to that. So here, the list of the different modules. And you can also see that you will have a language. You have 30 hours in the first